Steve Harvey had been hosting Family Feud for over 13 years, and in that time he had witnessed countless emotional moments, heard hundreds of touching stories, and been moved to tears more times than he could count. But on a bright Saturday morning in May 2024, a 52-year-old foster father named Marcus Williams was about to share a story so powerful, so heartbreaking, and so beautiful that it would cause Steve Harvey to literally shake with emotion, unable to maintain his composure, as this single man explained the promise he made that led him to adopt 6 children who had been written off by the system as unadoptable. What started as a simple question about his large family would become one of the most emotionally devastating and inspiring moments in Family Feud history, a testament to the power of unconditional love and the extraordinary things ordinary people do when they refuse to give up on children nobody else wants. Before we dive into this incredible story, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss these moments that restore your faith in humanity. The Williams family stood on the Family Feud stage, and they were impossible to miss. Marcus Williams, age 52, was a tall African-American man with kind eyes and an easy smile. But what made the family remarkable was the children beside him, 6 kids ranging in age from 11 to 17, of different races and ethnicities, each with their own unique story written in their faces. There was Jamal, 17, African-American with a quiet intensity about him. Sophia, 16, Latina with protective body language that suggested she was used to looking out for herself and others. Twin boys, Deshaun and Devin, both 14, who stood close together like they were each other's anchor. Emily, 13, a white girl with bright red hair and freckles who kept adjusting her glasses nervously. And the youngest, Kai, 11, Asian American, who bounced with excitement despite the shadows behind his eyes. They were competing against the Peterson family from Ohio. But from the moment the Williams family took the stage, the energy in the studio shifted. There was something about this group, something about the way the children looked at Marcus with a mixture of love, respect, and deep gratitude that caught everyone's attention. Steve Harvey, always perceptive about family dynamics, immediately picked up on it. The game had been progressing normally, with both families playing well, and the Williams kids showing surprising teamwork and coordination for siblings with such varied ages. During a commercial break, Steve walked over to the Williams family, his curiosity clearly piqued. "Williams family," Steve said with his signature warmth, "I got to say, y'all have some beautiful children here. And I notice they're all different ages, different backgrounds. Tell me about your family." Marcus smiled, a smile that didn't quite hide the emotion behind it. "Well, Mr. Harvey, these are my 6 children. I adopted all of them through the foster care system." Steve's eyebrows went up. "All 6? You adopted 6 kids from foster care? That's incredible, man. Are you married? Where's mom?" Marcus's smile faltered slightly. "I'm single, Mr. Harvey. It's just me and these 6. The studio audience murmured with surprise. Steve's face showed genuine shock. "What, you're a single man and you adopted 6 children? 6? How does that even work? Most single men I know can barely take care of themselves, let alone 6 kids." The audience laughed, but Marcus's expression had become more serious. "Mr. Harvey, it works because it has to work, because these 6 kids needed a home and a father, and I couldn't let them down." Steve sensed there was more to this story. He glanced at the producers, silently asking if they had time for this, and received a nod. "Marcus, I feel like there's a story here. Can you tell me how this happened? How does a single man end up adopting 6 kids?" Marcus took a deep breath, looking at his children, who all nodded encouragingly. Jamal, the oldest, put his hand on his father's shoulder in support. Marcus's voice was steady when he began, but you could hear the emotion underneath. 17 years ago, I was a different person. I was successful, working in finance, making good money, living alone in a nice apartment. I had everything by society's standards, but I felt empty. I had lost my wife to cancer 3 years earlier, and we never had children. I was just going through the motions of life." He paused, gathering himself. "One day, my church asked for volunteers to mentor kids in foster care. I don't even know why I signed up. Maybe I was looking for purpose, or maybe God was pushing me. But I signed up, and they paired me with a 9-year-old boy named Jamal. Jamal, now 17, stepped closer to his father, his eyes already glistening with tears. Jamal had been in the system since he was 4 years old. Marcus continued, his voice thick with emotion. He had been in 12 different foster homes in 5 years. 12 homes, Mr. Harvey. He had been rejected, abandoned, moved around like he was disposable. He was angry, he was hurt, and he had every reason to believe that I would be just another adult who would eventually give up on him. Steve Harvey was already getting emotional, his eyes focused intently on Marcus. I started mentoring Jamal, spending time with him every week. And this kid, this angry, hurting kid, he started to open up. He told me about the homes he'd been in, about foster parents who only took kids for the monthly check, about siblings he'd been separated from, about social workers who looked at him like he was a problem to solve rather than a child who needed love. Marcus's voice broke. And one day, about 6 months into our mentoring relationship, Jamal looked at me and asked a question that changed my entire life. He said, "Marcus, when are you going to give up on me? When are you going to decide I'm too much trouble and stop coming?" The studio had gone completely silent. Steve Harvey's hand was over his mouth, tears already forming in his eyes. I looked at this 10-year-old boy. Marcus continued, tears now streaming down his face, and I realized that he had learned to expect abandonment. He had learned that adults say they care but eventually leave. And I made him a promise right then and there. I said, "Jamal, I will never give up on you. I will be here for you no matter what. You can count on me." And he looked at me with these eyes full of hope and fear and said, "Do you promise?" "Really promise." Marcus had to stop, overcome with emotion. Jamal wrapped his arms around his father, both of them crying. Steve Harvey was openly weeping, his whole body shaking. When Marcus could speak again, he continued, "I said yes. I promised. And 6 months later I started the process to adopt Jamal as a single man, which was incredibly difficult. The system doesn't make it easy for single men to adopt, especially to adopt an older child, especially to adopt across racial lines. But I had made a promise, and I was going to keep it." He wiped his eyes. The adoption was finalized when Jamal was 11, and I thought that was it. I thought I would raise Jamal, give him the stable home he deserved, and that would be my contribution. But then Jamal asked me something that broke and rebuilt my heart at the same time. Jamal spoke for the first time, his voice trembling. "I asked Dad if we could foster my friend Sophia. She was in one of my old foster homes, and it was bad. They were neglecting her, treating her like a maid. She was 13 and she was thinking about running away. I told Dad about her and I asked if we could help her." Sophia stepped forward, tears streaming down her face. "I had been in the system since I was 7 when my mother was deported and I had nowhere to go. I bounced around for 6 years, and most of those homes were terrible. When Jamal told me his dad might take me in, I didn't believe it. I thought it was just another false hope." Marcus continued, "I met Sophia, heard her story, and I couldn't say no. So at 37 years old, having just adopted one child, I agreed to foster a 13-year-old girl. The social workers thought I was crazy. They warned me about the challenges of having teenage children of different genders, about the trauma Sophia carried, about how hard it would be. But I had already learned something from Jamal. These kids don't need perfect parents, they need committed parents. They need adults who won't give up on them." He looked at Sophia with such love. Sophia lived with us for a year as a foster child, and in that year, she transformed. She went from this scared, defensive girl to someone who could laugh, who could trust, who could be a kid. And when she asked if I would adopt her, if I would be her forever dad, how could I say no? Sophia spoke through her sobs. "Dad gave me something I never had: safety. I could sleep without being afraid. I could eat without wondering when the next meal would come. I could just be a kid, and when the adoption was finalized, when he legally became my father, that was the first time in my life I felt like I belonged somewhere." Steve Harvey had sat down on the stage, unable to stand anymore. His shoulders were shaking with silent sobs. The audience was crying. The production crew was crying. Even the Peterson family, their competitors, had abandoned their side of the stage to listen to this story. Marcus went on, his voice gaining strength even through the tears. 2 years later, the twins, Deshaun and Devon, came into our lives. They were 11 years old, and they had been in the system since they were 4. They had been adopted once when they were 6, but the adoptive parents gave them back to the system when they were 9 because they said the boys were too difficult. One of the twins, Deshaun, spoke up, his voice hard with old pain. We were returned like defective products. Our adoptive parents literally called our social worker and said we were too much work and they wanted us gone. We were 9 years old and we were rejected by people who promised to be our forever family. Devon added, we were separated after that. The system put us in different homes because nobody wanted to take both of us. We were apart for a year, and it was the worst year of our lives. We're twins. We're supposed to be together. Marcus's face showed anger and pain at the memory. When I heard about 2 brothers who had been adopted and then rejected, who had been separated, I couldn't stand it. Jamal and Sophia begged me to at least meet them. And when I met these 2 boys who were so hurt, so angry, so desperate to be together, I knew I had to bring them home. He continued, the system fought me. They said I already had 2 kids and taking 2 more would be too much. They said the twins had behavioral issues. They said a single father couldn't handle 4 children. But I didn't care what they said. These boys needed to be together, and they needed a home that wouldn't give up on them. Deshaun spoke, emotion breaking through his tough exterior. When Dad said he wanted to adopt both of us, that he wouldn't separate us, I didn't believe it. I thought it was a trick. I thought he would change his mind. I spent the first 6 months in his house waiting to be sent back. But he never sent us back. Devon added, no matter how angry we got, no matter how much we tested him, no matter how many times we pushed him away because we were scared to trust again, he never gave up. He kept showing up. He kept loving us. He kept his promise. Steve Harvey was now lying on the stage floor, completely overcome. He wasn't even trying to maintain composure anymore. Other staff members had come onto the stage to support him. Marcus continued, needing to finish the story. 2 years ago, Emily came to us. She was 11 years old, and she had been in 19 different foster homes in 7 years. 19, Mr. Harvey. She was labeled difficult, troubled, unadoptable. She had attachment issues, trust issues, and she didn't believe anyone would ever really want her. Emily, the red-haired 13-year-old, stepped forward shyly. I have autism and ADHD. Most foster parents couldn't handle it. They would keep me for a few weeks or months, then send me back because I was too much work. I learned to not unpack my suitcase because I knew I wouldn't be staying long. Her voice broke completely. When I came to the Williams house, I was so scared. I had 4 siblings already, and I thought they would hate me, that I would be the weird kid who ruins everything. But Jamal, Sophia, Deshaun, and Devon, they welcomed me. They helped me when I had meltdowns. They understood when I needed space. And Dad, he learned everything about autism so he could help me be my best self. Marcus pulled Emily close. Emily taught us all so much about patience, understanding, and seeing people for who they truly are rather than their labels. She's brilliant, creative, and so full of love. Any family that rejected her missed out on knowing an incredible human being. And then there's Kai, Marcus said, looking at his youngest, who had been quiet until now. Kai, 11 years old, stepped forward. His voice was small but clear. My mom died when I was 6. She was sick for a long time. I don't have any other family in America. My dad was never in my life. The system put me in foster care, and I was in 5 different homes in 4 years. People would take me in, but nobody wanted to adopt me. They said I was too sad, that I cried too much, that I had too many problems. Marcus knelt down to Kai's level, looking him in the eyes as he spoke. Kai came to us a year and a half ago as a foster placement. He was 9 years old and he barely spoke. The trauma of losing his mother, of being rejected by foster family after foster family, had made him withdraw into himself. The social worker told me that Kai would probably never be adopted, that he should just age out of the system. His voice turned fierce. And I looked at that social worker and said, that is not happening. This child will not age out of the system. This child will have a family. Kai threw his arms around Marcus, sobbing. Dad saved me. I was drowning and he pulled me out. He taught me it's okay to be sad sometimes, that missing my mom doesn't make me broken, and that I could have a new family without forgetting my first family. Marcus stood back up, all 6 of his children now surrounding him, holding on to him. crying together. Mr. Harvey, you asked me how I ended up adopting 6 children. The answer is simple. I made a promise to Jamal 17 years ago that I would never give up on him. And in keeping that promise, I learned that there are thousands of kids in the foster care system that everyone has given up on. Kids who are labeled too old, too troubled, too difficult, unadoptable. Kids who are rejected and moved and treated like they're disposable. His voice grew stronger, more passionate. But these kids aren't disposable. They're not too anything. They're children who have been hurt and who need someone to fight for them, to believe in them, to promise them that they're worth it, and then prove it every single day. He looked at each of his children. I didn't adopt 6 kids because I'm special or because I'm some kind of saint. I adopted 6 kids because I met 6 children who needed a father, and I had the capacity to be that father. I adopted 6 kids because someone had to show them that they were worth fighting for, worth keeping, worth loving. Marcus's voice broke again. And these 6 kids, they saved me as much as I saved them. After my wife died, I was just existing. I had given up on finding purpose or joy. But Jamal, Sophia, Deshaun, Devon, Emily, and Kai, they gave me a reason to live again. They gave me a family. They gave me love. They made me a father. Steve Harvey finally pulled himself together enough to stand up, though his whole body was still shaking with emotion. His face was soaked with tears, his voice barely a whisper when he spoke. Marcus, I need you to listen to me very carefully. In all my years on television, in all the stories I've heard, in all the people I've met, I have never encountered anyone like you. What you've done, the children you've saved, the promises you've kept, that's not just good parenting. That's heroic. He had to stop and wipe his face. You took 6 children that society had written off. 6 kids that other people said were too broken, too difficult, too much trouble, and you loved them. You fought for them. You made them a family. Steve turned to the children. And you 6, I want you to hear something. Your dad didn't save you because you were easy. He didn't save you because you were perfect. He saved you because he saw your worth when nobody else did. He saw past your trauma, past your labels, past your pain, and he saw children who deserved love and family. And now look at you. Look at this family. He addressed the audience and cameras. Do you see this? This is what love looks like. Real love. Not the easy love of good times and convenience, but the hard love that fights through trauma and behavioral issues and system barriers. This is the love that changes lives. Steve wiped his eyes again. Marcus, you're a single man who adopted 6 kids from foster care. Do you understand how rare that is? Do you understand that most people wouldn't take on even 1 child with the kind of backgrounds these kids have? And you took 6. Marcus spoke humbly. I just did what any decent person should do. I saw children who needed help and I helped them. No, Steve said firmly. No, that's not what any person would do. Most people would walk away. Most people would say it's too hard, too expensive, too much trouble. Most people would tell themselves that it's someone else's responsibility. But you didn't. You saw 6 separate children at different times, and 6 separate times you said yes. You said, I will be your father. I will fight for you. I will never give up on you. He turned to Jamal. You're 17 now, right? You're about to age out of the system anyway, and a lot of people would have let you go. But your dad adopted you when you were 11, when you were still difficult, when you were still testing him. He chose you. To Sophia, you had been rejected by your own country, bounced around in foster care, used and neglected. He gave you a home, a father, a family. To the twins, you were returned like you didn't matter, separated like your bond meant nothing. He brought you back together and made you whole. To Emily, 19 foster homes, 19 families who couldn't see past your neurodivergence to the brilliant, beautiful child you are. He saw you. He valued you. He fought for you. To Kai, you were drowning in grief, written off as too damaged. He pulled you out and taught you it was okay to heal. Steve looked back at Marcus, his whole body still trembling. And you did all of this alone, as a single man in a system that's already hard for married couples. You fought the prejudice, the bureaucracy, the financial strain, everything, because you made promises to children and you kept them. He had to pause again, overcome. Marcus Williams, you are what every child in foster care dreams about. You're the adult who doesn't give up. You're the father who keeps showing up. You're the promise that doesn't break. Steve made a decision right there. Stop the game. I don't care about the score. The Williams family wins everything. They win the game, they win the money, and they're getting more. He pulled out his phone and made a call right on stage. Yeah, it's Steve. I need you to set up college funds for 6 kids. Yes, 6. Full ride scholarships through the Steve Harvey Foundation for all 6 Williams children. I don't care what it costs. These kids are getting college paid for. He made another call. I need to talk to a producer about a special episode. We're doing a full hour on the Williams family, on foster care, on adoption. We're going to use this platform to change how people think about adopting older kids from the system. He hung up and addressed Marcus directly. Your family is going to get the resources you need. Therapy, educational support, whatever it takes. And we're going to use your story to recruit more families to consider adopting older kids from foster care. The audience erupted in applause, but Steve held up his hand. I'm not done. Marcus, you've given everything to these kids. You've sacrificed your time, your money, your energy, everything. The Steve Harvey Foundation is giving you and your family a vacation, all expenses paid. You're going to Disney World, and you're going to have a week where you can just be a family without any stress or worry. All 6 children rushed to Steve, hugging him, thanking him through their tears. But Steve redirected them. Don't thank me. Thank your father. Thank the man who saw 6 kids that everyone else gave up on and said, "Those are my children." The Peterson family, who had been watching all of this in tears, asked to speak. Their father stepped forward. Marcus, we came here to compete against you, but all I want to do now is shake your hand and tell you that you've inspired me. I'm going home and I'm going to talk to my wife about becoming foster parents. If you can do what you've done as a single man, we have no excuse not to help. When the episode aired 8 weeks later, the response was unprecedented. The Williams family's story was viewed over 200 million times in the first month. Foster care and adoption agencies across the country reported a 600% increase in inquiries about adopting older children from the system. Hundreds of families came forward saying they had been inspired by Marcus to consider adoption, but perhaps most impactingly, the episode sparked a national conversation about the children languishing in foster care. The kids who are labeled unadoptable because they're too old, have too many behavioral issues, have disabilities, or have been in the system too long. The episode forced people to confront the reality that there are over 100 Zalozan children in the U.S. foster care system waiting for adoptive families, and most of them will age out without ever finding a permanent home. Organizations that supported foster care and adoption saw unprecedented donations. Laws were passed in several states to make it easier for single people to adopt and to provide more financial support for families who adopt older children or children with special needs. 6 months after the episode aired, Marcus and his family were invited to speak at the White House about foster care reform. They met with legislators, shared their story, and advocated for changes to the system that had failed so many children before Marcus intervened in their lives. 1 year after the Family Feud appearance, all 6 children were thriving. Jamal had graduated high school as valedictorian and was attending Howard University on the scholarship Steve's foundation had provided, studying social work so he could help other foster kids. Sophia was a junior in high school, captain of her volleyball team, and planning to study law to advocate for immigrant children. The twins, Deshaun and Devon, had started a podcast called The Throwaway Kids, where they interviewed other former foster youth and shared resources. Emily had become an advocate for autistic children in foster care, using her own experience to help others. And Kai, while still working through his grief, had opened up in remarkable ways, joining the school choir and making friends for the first time since his mother's death. Marcus himself had been profiled in major publications, invited to speak at conferences, and had become the face of a movement to reform foster care and encourage adoption of older children. But despite all the attention, he remained humble and focused on his children. In an interview on the first anniversary of the Family Feud episode, Marcus reflected on his journey. "People call me a hero, but I'm not. I'm just a dad. Yes, I adopted 6 kids that other people said were too difficult. But you know what I got in return? 6 incredible human beings who make me laugh every day, who challenge me to be better, who taught me more about love and resilience than I ever taught them. I'm not their savior. We saved each other. He continued, and if my story inspires even one family to consider adopting from foster care, to look at those older kids or kids with special needs and say, that could be my child, then every struggle, every challenge, every moment of doubt was worth it. The children also reflected on how their lives had changed. In a group interview, they each shared their perspective. Jamal: before Dad adopted me, I thought I was unlovable. I thought there was something wrong with me because nobody wanted to keep me. Dad showed me that I wasn't the problem. The system was the problem. He showed me that I was worth fighting for, worth keeping, worth loving. That changed everything. Sophia: I went from being terrified every day to feeling safe. From feeling like a burden to feeling like a valued member of a family. Dad gave me the foundation I needed to build a life. Everything good in my life now exists because he took a chance on an angry 13-year-old girl who had every reason to not trust adults. Deshawn's: being given back to the system by our adoptive parents was the worst thing that ever happened to us. But meeting Dad was the best thing. He showed us that real commitment doesn't break when things get hard. He proved that we were worth keeping even on our worst days. Devon: Dad fought to keep us together when the system wanted to separate us permanently. He understood that we needed each other. He saw us as individuals but also as a unit. That's the kind of understanding that saves lives. Emily: I spent years believing I was too much for anyone. Too loud, too different, too difficult. Dad taught me that I'm not too much. I'm exactly enough. He celebrated my differences instead of trying to fix me. He gave me the space to be myself, and that's the greatest gift anyone has ever given me. Kai: I was drowning in sadness and nobody knew how to help me. Dad didn't fix my sadness, but he sat with me in it. He let me grieve while also showing me that life could be good again. He gave me a family while honoring the family I lost. That takes a special person. 5 years after the Family Feud episode, the Williams family had grown even stronger. Marcus had written a book titled 6 Promises: How Saying Yes to Foster Kids Changed All Our Lives. The book became a bestseller and was being developed into a documentary. But more importantly, the book served as a practical guide for other potential adoptive parents, particularly single people and those considering adopting older children or children with special needs. Marcus had also started a foundation called The Promise Project that provided financial assistance, training, and support to families wanting to adopt from foster care but lacking resources. The foundation had helped facilitate over 500 adoptions in its first 3 years, focusing specifically on the children that agencies labeled as hard to place. The 6 children, now aged 16 to 22, had all become advocates in their own right. They spoke at schools, churches, and community centers about their experiences in foster care and the importance of adoption. They shared their trauma honestly, but also their healing, providing hope to other children in the system who felt hopeless. 10 years after that May morning, when Steve Harvey shook with emotion hearing their story, the Williams family returned to Family Feud for a special reunion episode. The changes were remarkable. Jamal was now 27, with a master's degree in social work and running a foster care advocacy organization. Sophia was 26, a lawyer specializing in immigration and family law. The twins were 24, both working as mentors for at-risk youth. Emily was 23, an artist whose work focused on neurodiversity and acceptance. And Kai was 21, a college student studying grief counseling, wanting to help other children who had lost parents. Steve Harvey, now older himself, embraced each of them like they were his own children. 10 years ago, y'all came on this stage and told a story that changed my life. He said, his voice still emotional. I thought I understood love and commitment, but Marcus, you showed me what it really means to keep a promise. You showed me what it means to see value in people that everyone else has written off. He turned to the children, now adults. And you 6, look at what you've become. Successful, compassionate, strong adults who are changing the world. You could have let your trauma define you. You could have let the rejection and pain make you bitter. But instead, you used it to fuel your purpose, to help others, to break cycles. That's extraordinary. Marcus, now 62 years old with gray in his hair but the same kind eyes, spoke about the decade since their first appearance. Steve, you asked me 10 years ago how I ended up adopting 6 children. Today, I can tell you that adopting these 6 was the easiest decision I ever made. Raising them. That was hard. There were days I didn't know if I could do it. Days when the trauma was too much, when the behaviors were too challenging, when I was too tired and too broke and too overwhelmed. He looked at his children with such love, but there was never a day when I regretted saying yes to any of them. Never a day when I thought I should give up, because I had made them promises, and I'm a man who keeps his promises. Jamal spoke for all the siblings. Dad, 10 years ago on this stage, you told our story. You shared our trauma, our pain, our journey, and it wasn't easy to have our lives laid bare like that. But you did it because you knew that our story could help other kids. And it did. Hundreds of kids found families because of what you shared. That's the kind of man you are. You turned our pain into purpose. He continued, emotion thick in his voice. We want to make an announcement. The 6 of us have been talking, and we've decided to follow in your footsteps. We're all going to become foster parents when we're ready. We're going to take in the kids that nobody else wants. The teenagers. The kids with disabilities. The sibling groups. The ones labeled unadoptable. Because you showed us that those labels mean nothing. You showed us that every child deserves a chance, a family, a promise that won't break. Steve Harvey broke down completely, as did Marcus, as did everyone in the studio. You're going to continue the legacy, Steve said through his tears. You're going to be for other kids what your father was for you. Sophia added, we're also establishing a scholarship fund in Dad's name for former foster youth who want to go to college. We're pooling our resources, our time, our voices, to make sure that what Dad started doesn't end with us. It expands. The reunion episode ended with all 6 Williams children surrounding their father, Steve Harvey joining the embrace, and a message on the screen. There are currently over 100 Zarosan children in U.S. foster care waiting for adoptive families. 60% of them are over the age of 6. Many will age out of the system without ever finding a permanent home. Be a Marcus. Make a promise. Keep it. Change a life. So before you click away from this powerful story, take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. Because stories like this don't just inspire us, they challenge us to action. Marcus Williams didn't have any special qualifications to be a father to 6 traumatized children. He didn't have a degree in social work or unlimited financial resources or a perfect life. He just had a willingness to see children that society had written off and say, you matter. You're worth it. I will fight for you. And that decision, multiplied across 6 separate children at 6 separate times, created a family that defies every stereotype and challenges every excuse we make for not helping children in need. His story asks us uncomfortable questions. What promises are we willing to make? What children are we willing to fight for? What labels are we willing to look past to see the human being underneath? And are we brave enough to say yes to something difficult because it's the right thing to do? Steve Harvey shook with emotion that day, not because the story was simply sad or touching, but because he was confronted with the extraordinary capacity of one human being to change the trajectory of 6 lives through the simple but radical act of keeping his word. That's not just beautiful. That's revolutionary. And it's possible for any of us who are willing to make the promise and do the hard work of keeping it.